Ross? Is this yours? I'll just leave it there then.
I was like,
Maybe it was Christie's and I was like calling it.
thanks.
So is the agenda up? Or-
So we're gonna do roll call using this, so if you can just sign in. Click
Oh.
your name. Good afternoon, Commissioner. Or click your name first,
Oh, here, okay.
and then sign in. And then if you wanna see the agenda, it's down there.
Okay. Okay. Today, right? So-
Yeah.
Okay, I'm all set, yeah. Okay, good evening. Let's call to order the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. And we'll start with a roll call.
So if you haven't already, can you please sign in to the computer monitor in front of you, and we'll take roll. You just have to sign in to the monitor, and it looks
Okay.
like we have 6 present and 1 absent.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. And Commissioner Winters, will you lead us, please? Thank you. Item 4, special presentations and proclamations. I don't believe we have any of those today.
There are none.
Okay. Do we have any oral communications or direction to staff?
There are none.
Okay. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Okay. Item 7, the minutes from February 15th. Have we all been able to review those? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Go to a vote.
The minutes are approved, 6 yes, 1 absent.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to action items, starting with the voting of the Parks and Rec Commission Chair and Vice Chair. Couple reminders here. Before we start, a commissioner may nominate themselves, and a commissioner may nominate another commissioner, and you must accept or decline your nomination. So we'll start with Parks and Recreation Commission Chair. The floor is now open for nominations.
I would like to nominate Vice Chair Lappin for chair.
Okay. Okay, great. Are there any additional nominations for chair? Okay. Hearing none, nominations are now closed for the chair position, and we'll proceed to vote on that.
Just point of order. We do need to check in with Commissioner Lapin if she's interested
if she
in accepting the
accepted or
nomination.
declined,
I
apologize.
accept, thank you.
Broke my own rule there. Yeah. Okay, now we will vote for the chair.
And since there are no other nominees, a vote is not necessary.
Okay. Okay, the next position is vice chair. The floor is now open for nominations.
I would like to nominate Commissioner Ritter.
I will second that. Any additional nominations? Okay. Nominations are closed, and I think we have our new chair and vice chair. Congratulations.
Point of order, I think you have
Yep.
to ask if Commissioner
Once
Ritter would
again.
like to.
Thank you, Director. Commissioner
I
Ritter, do you?
accept the option, or the opportunity, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to 8B, Parks and Rec Commission Work Plan. So to date, our goal is to finalize the outcomes for the previous year's work plan and then initiate discussion for the upcoming year's work plan. So I believe that we have a lot of the outcome language already put together. And what I'd like to do, this being a public forum, is to read through these. But prior to that, has everyone been able to read through these? Do we have any discussions on any of the outcome language? Because maybe we could tackle those items first. Okay, if so, we can make changes as we go. But we'll start with community outreach number 1. Parks and Recreation staff conduct annual tours for the commission. 1, to observe various summer programs as possible due to COVID-19, and 1, to visit city parks, beaches, trails, and open space. And our outcome is that commissioners are engaged, educated, and remain aware of current statistics and trends in the public use of parks, beaches, trails, and recreation. The commission attended a tour in October 2021, comprised of stops at Moonlight Beach, Olympus Park, Lot 15 Trail, Community and Senior Center patio space, Oak Crest Park Bocce Shade, and the Maggie Houlihan Memorial Dog Park. Okay. Next item, attend city-sponsored events, serving as city ambassadors by welcoming, meeting, and greeting the public, and serving in a volunteer capacity, conducting various event duties as needed. The outcome is that commissioners are engaged in interacting with citizens while remaining aware of current trends in the public use of parks, beaches, trails, and recreational special events. Commissioners attended Dog Days of Summer and EcoFest, working both events and serving as ambassadors. Commissioners participated in the holiday parade by planning their parade entry and providing representation in the parade. Commissioners attended the Cyclovia event in January. Item 3, identify guest speakers for monthly meetings. Center for Natural Land Management presented at the May meeting on the Manchester Preserve. Cardiff 101 and city staff spoke at the July meeting regarding Dog Days of Summer. EcoFest was presented at the August meeting. Council member and city staff presented an overview of the CIP and budget process at the November meeting. Item 4, continue support of patrons of Encinitas Parks. as they continue support of Parks and Recreation. We notified PEP of city events and effort to find individuals who could represent PEP at the events. We worked with community members to obtain grant for park-related improvements with PEP as the named nonprofit, although that grant was not awarded. Discussed importance of PEP becoming more active within the community and increasing awareness of the organization. Worked, I need the next page here, with PEP president to volunteer at EcoFest, an event in which Encinitas Parks and Recreation was involved in. Worked with a PEP volunteer regarding PEP marketing efforts. Commissioner Hansen offered his help with finances for PEP. Okay, item 5, participate in the Parks Recreation Department's implementation of the Parks Master Plan. Specific focus includes, but not limited to, items, a Trails Master Plan, sand volleyball courts, and continue to develop the vision of an aquatic center. So item 1-2A, the Trails Master Plan. Subcommittee primarily focused on trail connectivity and prioritization as staff executed on signage updates at key trailheads. Collaborated with the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission, Nature Collective, and Cardiff 101 Main Street to promote a safe pedestrian crossing at San Elijo Avenue and Manchester Avenue in Cardiff, along with the trail connection to the existing San Elijo Lagoon Trail system. Continued to promote the completion of Trails 82 and 95 in Lebanon. For the sand volleyball item, we have advanced efforts toward the goal of implementing additional sand volleyball courts in Encinitas. We conducted public outreach and surveyed local residents regarding court placement. Council allocated $30,000 in studies needed to explore the feasibility of amending ECP major use permit. Created and expanded database to foster dialogue with the SVB, sand volleyball, community, and delivered updates. Okay, the Aquatic Center.
Before you go there,
Yes.
I was just going to recommend that we remove the "of" in front of the 30,000.
Oh, thank you. I skipped over it, and
Just a little typo.
okay, that's great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, anything else, please just stop me. I'd probably need a break anyway. Reevaluated past efforts alongside current plans to support aquatics. Continuing studies by SDU, HSD are well developed and merit further review as updates are being completed. This may offer an optional approach to serve the educational and training needs of the community. In the absence of any clear demand for a recreational aquatic facility, this development may have implications for future use of space in ECP. Okay, next, item 6.
Dave, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I had one question about the sand volleyball and
Oh,
and that was really, I think, a piece that was missing. That was a big piece that the commission or the subcommittee did, was to draft a report and a recommendation and submit that actually to the city council. And from that work and that report and recommendation, they ultimately did allocate that $30,000. So I think we really did a lot towards the volleyball, and we've been doing a lot. And I think that submission of that report and the request was a big milestone last year that we achieved.
okay, yes.
I'm not sure if we should add that but I wanted to say it.
Well, yeah, advanced efforts, maybe sounds like what you're saying is we want to break down advanced efforts a little bit more. We could add that as a second sentence, saying that we submitted a.
Yeah, and we don't need to wordsmith it right now, and I'm not sure if there's a process to add that kind of information.
I think we want to wordsmith it now.
Yeah.
Is that correct? We sort of want to finalize these.
Yes, so help me recall, that report came directly from the commission at that time.
It did.
Okay.
Because, Dave, you wrote, we
We put it
collectively wrote
together,
it, and
the
you
letter.
submitted it to them.
It was a letter of recommendation, correct?
Yes, and it included some graphic visuals of what the courts would look like, some rough cost estimates. Yeah,
We can certainly add a sentence, you just need to let us know what you wanted to read.
okay.
I think the addition between the second and third sentences seem to be an appropriate place for it to kind of add that additional information because, you did first conduct public outreach and survey the local residents, and then you did the recommendation letter, and then the next sentence talks about how the council allocated the money.
Yeah. So between those two sentences, I guess, drafted and submitted I'm not sure if it was a recommendation letter or the term for that, to the council to review, and then I think that
Yeah.
calls that piece out.
Yeah, I agree. But I know we're trying to keep this really brief. I agree with Commissioner Ritter's placement on that. Could we just have a brief sentence, something to the effect of submitted a thorough report and recommendation letter to City Council?
We can absolutely add that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. That's
Appreciate
good. That's perfect. Okay.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
May I ask a question or make a suggestion on 3.1A, which is the Aquatic Center?
Yep.
So maybe first as a question to that subcommittee, as it relates to the last sentence, or have we determined that there is not a clear demand at this time for an aquatic center?
I think we've determined that to a degree in that there has been very little response or engagement from that community regarding, specifically regarding recreation. That doesn't apply to the educational and training because there are plans afoot to deal with those needs. But regarding what we would consider a public pool for recreation, the demand, or at least the vocalization of that demand, is largely absent right now.
I would agree with that.
Okay, then is it fair, and this is a suggestion, I'm not part of this subcommittee, but is it fair to potentially modify the last sentence to say, determined there is not a clear demand for a recreational aquatic facility? Because I'm getting a little bit confused in the absence of any clear demand. So I would suggest perhaps, and maybe you need to reflect on it, is if we say, determined there was not a clear demand for a recreation aquatic facility, maybe as just a period there. I don't know if you need the second part of that last sentence either.
And I also think that if we did end it somewhat like that, it would make sense that if, as a commission, we decide not to have this particular work plan item on the future work plan, and it, I think, brings this particular issue to a close unless there's more community interest that comes up in the future.
Do you want to go ahead? I would be okay with rewording that to say, something along the lines of, at this time, there is no clear demand for a recreational aquatic facility, and just editing it like that, if Commissioner Elliott agrees.
I agree.
Okay, and as far as that last half of the sentence, would we keep that, or?
I mean, I think we can remove that, but I'm open to Commissioner Elliott's input.
I like the idea of removing it.
Was that clear? Okay.
Okay.
Well, I guess I would ask, since we originally drafted it like that, was our intention to, I guess, record our thoughts that space that was originally envisioned in the ECP master plan, where we may be looking to re-envision the use of that space.
If I could just chime in here, I can speak to a little bit more to this as we get to the item, but really the work that will be done to re-envision that space will be a public process, and it will consist of many different components. So I can share that when we get to the item on possible courts at ECP. However, I really think that work will be done by the public, and it will be done with a consultant.
Right. Okay. Then, if we just remove it,
I think I think the gist of what we're trying to say is that we are not aware of any strong community support for a recreational aquatic center within Encinitas at this time. That's not to say there won't be, but we have not found those people in this past year.
Yes, I think that was my understanding of your conclusion based on your hard work and reporting throughout the year. So I think it's important to have that in the record, that there's determined that there is no clear demand for a recreational aquatic facility at this time.
Right.
Period,
And-
full stop.
Just to clarifying again, the other thing that you could do is say that the ad hoc committee came to the conclusion of, because there really hasn't been any formal study
Yes,
of
I was
that.
gonna say, I like that, yeah. Thank you.
And we should probably note that Vice Chair Lappin and I both feel that there won't be any continuing need for another action item for next year's work plan regarding this.
Okay, Commissioner Elliott, is that something you would like to add to the outcome, or just you wanted that to be noted?
Not unless we need to. The subject came up.
Okay. Okay, I'm just clarifying. So are we clear on, okay. Thanks, Commissioners. Item 6, research best practices and policies in regard to multi-use trail sharing. Performed community outreach by attending Encinitas Trails Coalition meetings and ETC Parks and Recreation staff meetings. Attended Solana Beach and Encinitas Joint Bike Safety Meeting. Collaborated with Traffic Public Safety Commission and local law enforcement to identify and understanding specific issues relating to e-bike usage. Supported the San Diego Bike Coalition City of Encinitas bike safety video production. Researched multi-use trail sharing issues and practices in surrounding municipalities, Poway, Del Mar, Escondido, Elfin Forest, San Marcos, Solana Beach. The Commission's recommendation is for Parks and Recreation staff to continue to implement signage on the trail system, notifying users of current municipal codes regarding equestrian right-of-way and e-bike usage. We have any updates to that one? Okay. Item 7, review tennis and pickleball court use in city parks. Discussed issues with residents, posted requests for feedback, held a Zoom feedback and information session, made recommendations to PNR staff. New court sharing policy was set in place at Cottonwood Creek. Discussed the feasibility of making the Moonlight Beach courts permanent, dedicated pickleball courts. Confirmed a strong interest from many residents in increasing the number of available pickleball courts within the city. Followed up with Parks and Recreation staff to check on status of the court sharing. Parks and Recreation reported that the number of issues has greatly decreased. Item 8, review composting options in city parks and facilities. At this time, the city is unable to introduce facility park organics collection ahead of the timeline established by SB 1383. Once the city is able to extend their organics collection to businesses, we hope to be able to introduce it to parks and beaches as well. Next item, fitness trail and court feasibility. The outcome is that they ad hoc researched and confirmed with staff that the recreational trails master plan does not need to be amended to add a fitness trail court along the coastal rail trail. North County Transit District, the CRT landowner, has provided preliminary approval to add a fitness amenity along the existing CRT in Cardiff. Using extensive criteria, ad hoc commissioners evaluated all Encinitas parks and beaches for the feasibility of adding adult fitness amenities to each location. Okay. So I think we're going to vote on these outcomes, is that correct? Okay.
So if there are no changes to the work plan besides the ones that were brought up that we can make the changes on, you can vote on the whole work plan. If you'd rather do that, then go item by item. So you can say, make a motion to approve the work plan with the changes proposed.
Okay, yeah, I think we want to entertain that as a motion. Is anyone?
I just wanted to comment that I really liked the direction that we went on the outcomes, where we spent the time between the last meeting and this meeting to really kind of thoroughly work together in our subcommittees to kind of define what it is that we want to say. And I really feel like our outcome statements are much more powerful and well worded because we went through that exercise rather than doing it here.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, everyone did their homework, and I think it's made for a very efficient sort of final report. Yes, Commissioner Winters.
I'll make a motion to approve the work plan as amended with today's changes.
I'll second.
Okay. Great job, great job. So now we're going to...
Point of order?
Yes.
Are we going to vote on the work? Do we have to vote
Oh,
on
we
this?
do.
Okay.
Apologize. I'm skipping around today. I'm a little too anxious.
All right, the 2021-2022 work plan is approved, 6 yes and 1 absent.
Okay. So now I think we will be having a discussion about the next work plan before we move on to the 8C item. So I think a good way to start might be to look at the previous year's work plan and see if any of those want to stay on board, which I believe Aquatic Center is not going to. But let's see if we can we call up the work plan again? Is that possible? Okay. So our first 3 items, I think we want to stay. Director Carlin had an idea about the guest speakers. I don't know if you want to suggest that on your own or.
I can suggest it. So on a couple of our other commissions, we actually have an ad hoc committee that's assigned to this. It kind of hones in on someone taking charge of finding speakers and helping to do that. Because we typically like to have a speaker at each meeting just so that we're staying up to date on trends and what's happening around the county, what's happening in Parks and Recreation, if you want to update on a project, that kind of stuff. So it just kind of puts the onus on a few people to reach out to the other commissioners, ask the questions at the meeting, come up with suggestions, that kind of thing. So if you're open to that.
I like that idea.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would help because it puts a subset of commissioners together and they say, okay, what are we going to do? And I think that will help.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we think
Vice
that
Chair.
same approach for item number 2 would be beneficial to just not saying that not everybody participates, but would having an ad hoc as sort of what Commissioner Hansen did for our whole group for the holiday parade? Is there merit in having a small group who can organize and liaise between the events and the commissioners? Is that beneficial or is that unnecessary, do you think?
That is totally up to you.
Okay.
But just historically speaking too, I've seen this this item state that commissioners are expected to attend at least 2 events.
Okay.
I don't see that in the current work plan, but I know for sure that we have that on our youth commission work plan. But that's something that you can talk about too. So you could break it in, have stated goal number 2, We're going to attend, each commissioner is going to attend 2 events, and then we are going to solidify an ad hoc that works on the holiday parade entry or something like
Okay.
that. So, yeah.
I think we reduced it from 2 to 1 during COVID because there were no events. I think that was.
I see that it's members involved column, it says each commissioner participates in a minimum of 1 if possible. But
Well, hopefully we're back in business, so
Yeah.
you guys can attend all you want.
And just to be clear, we can hold discussions, and I mean, I would think the next meeting, we would sort of formulate the language like we did. So, I mean, I think the discussion is great. I just don't want to make sure the commissioners understand we don't have to nail down these work plan items today. But I like the idea of saying, okay, maybe you're in charge of getting people for the holiday parade and breaking out, because there are going to be more city events, definitely, than there were in the past.
And my personal experience was that, like Cyclovia, I was there, but I didn't know if there was something I could do to be helpful. So I showed up. But it'd be nice to know if there was a way that we, as a commission, could be more supportive of staff and the events that they're putting on, or the community at large. And I would say maybe having a liaison or a group of people who can take that on might help us be more productive at those events.
Yeah.
And I would say that our commission members are passionate about Parks and Rec, and that we're showing up and we are being ambassadors for the department. And that's kind of the fun part of our volunteer work here. And I think that if we have an opportunity to build on that by maybe having a specific time, for instance, for the upcoming egg hunt, where it's like, if you're available and can you attend, and if you can attend, the commissioners are going to meet at such place at 10 a.m. to volunteer and do X, or just to be there. So I think it provides visibility for the commission. We might actually get even more citizen participation during oral communications. Commissioner Lappin and I were at the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission last night, and it was like 3/4 were full. So it is different to come to our commission meetings, and I think a lot of people don't quite realize that we're here. So I think, any visibility, having the shirts, I think last year getting them for us has been fantastic. Having the name tags. I know sometimes when I go out to events, I'll have the name tags and people will come up and talk to me about parks. So I think that the idea of, rather than just generally disseminating it, that this is kind of a general idea, that if we could maybe have a, we won't call them a party planner, but a commission planner to help us with some of the specific events that the Parks and Rec Department is involved with, and even some perhaps Encinitas events that are not necessarily directly related to Parks and Rec, but maybe also that just have high visibility, like the upcoming Encinitas Spring Street Fair coming up in April. I'm not sure if we have do we have a booth at that event or not?
Commissioner Ritter, typically we have a booth when we have an MOU with an organization. We have a ton of permitted events that come through us. Occasionally we'll get asked to do a booth there, but typically it's when we have an MOU with a partnership.
Thank you. But when we do have those MOUs, maybe we might spend 15 minutes, 30 minutes at our booth representing and supporting our staff.
Okay. Yeah, I think another thing that would be beneficial would be advance notice, because I know I showed up at Cyclovia a couple years ago, and there was no time for Nick Buck to think of, well, I could have used you here had I known. So I think that could be a part of the ad hoc. Do we have any? Yes, Commissioner Allen.
Just another comment. I think the large number of empty seats out there just reflects the high level of satisfaction with the job Parks and Rec is doing, but that's just my opinion. I like the idea of having a little bit more of a liaison I know that after Cyclovia, a lot of us talked to each other, and it's like we were all there at various times during the day. And that would offer an opportunity for us to be a little bit more useful if we could take assigned slots, and some of us can take afternoon slots as we prefer, and others who are morning people, that would not be me, can come for the early slots. And I think we could serve the community a little better if we do that.
Okay. And a question, would the new chair or vice chair be working on the language for the next commission meeting? Or because we can't all do it together, correct?
So these final outcomes, and I mean, we really should have a good stated goal, but the final outcomes and the members involved, that can remain fluid through the next meeting, because the outcomes are suggested outcomes. There may be things that come up along the way, and you adjust what happens. Many of our suggested outcomes that we started out with on our current work plan aren't what we ended up with.
Okay.
So, yeah, so the stated goal should be pretty concrete, but the other things can remain fluid.
Okay, I was just making sure that we had the mechanism in place to actually update them without violating the Brown Act. Okay, do we have anything else on items 1, 2, and 3? Any comments? Okay. Item 4, PEP. I can tell you my personal feeling on this. I would like to keep it because I believe we will have more PEP events as the Parks and Recreation has more events. And in addition to that, the organization, it's not at its strongest. I hope that we can grow it and find people to contribute. And I have a couple more ideas on that when I talk about another work plan item, but I am all for keeping PEP on the work plan.
I would second that, yeah.
Okay, next item, the Parks and Recreation Department's implementation of the Parks Master Plan. So these are three specific focus areas. We have Aquatic Center, Sand Volleyball, and Trails Master Plan. Let's start with Aquatic Center. Do we feel that that can be stricken in the next work plan
Yes.
for now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Sand Volleyball, any thoughts on that?
Well, we definitely want to keep it, and I'm not sure what level of participation we may be able to have in, how the 30,000 gets allocated, but I know that's something we're very interested in. If there is a part that we can play in that, I know we would want to do that. And then I also think we should, continue to communicate with the community about what's going on and what the next steps may be.
Okay, and
I could chime in there,
Yes,
Chair
please.
Warren. So I did have the opportunity to talk to our planning director today, and I said I would like this information for tonight. I'd like to get just what's involved in this process. So really, the process will be led by a consultant. So the $30,000 will be spent on consulting fees to change the major use permit or address the feasibility of that. So what's included in that is a parking study, traffic study, noise study, and then there will be a CPP or a community involvement meeting. All of those things will guide us toward the feasibility of changing the major use permit for the different uses that are being proposed. And right now, the scope of work has been basically produced as we're looking at the feasibility of fitness courts, sand volleyball courts, and pickleball / maybe tennis. So really, those are the things that we're focusing on. So the scope of work is already completed, and there's been a lot of work done by this commission to do that. Where the commission can be included in on this one, and I don't know if it warrants a work plan item on its own or should be part of this current work plan item where we say that we're going to continue to support these efforts. And the support could look something like attending meetings as a private citizen, not as a member of the commission, and then also promoting attendance at those meetings. So those are really the two key areas that the commission can continue to be involved in on that.
May I clarify something you're saying, Director Carlin? You're saying to do that as more of a monitoring the feasibility of changing the major use permit versus specifically monitoring just sand volleyball?
Correct. So the funding that was put forward in the last CIP round for this item is very broad. It says sports courts. That could encompass fitness courts. It could be sand volleyball courts. It could be tennis. It could be pickleball. So it's really looking at the feasibility of what fits best as a use at Encinitas Community Park in the space that's being provided.
Okay, thank you.
And all of those different elements will come into play. Noise, parking, traffic patterns, how are those elements going to change with a use in Encinitas Community Park?
So
Question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so does this only apply to that one space that was formerly assigned as a teen center?
We would have to explore that a little bit more. So we also, David and I had a conversation about it today. The cost of that study might be a little bit more than what we've budgeted for, which happens occasionally, and we have strategies to help with that, with getting those things off the ground. But we just wanted to make sure that the commission was aware that all of those elements are in play. Now, I'm not 100% sure, and maybe this is something we need to explore a little bit more, is do we want to actually take the use of the Aquatic Center out of that park with this study? So Tracy and I are going to reach out to the school district one more time just to see if they're still considering that site, because that's something that we definitely need to consider moving forward, because we'd hate to change the major use of that plot of land and then they have future intentions of doing something there.
Thank you. One point is that we're honoring the Parks Master Plan and the specific item 1.4B for sand volleyball. And this is not a complaint, but I just want to make sure it's clear. Are we shifting a little bit towards sport courts, or do we have an obligation to stay within the original goal, which presumably came from a lot of public support within the Parks Master Plan?
I think what I would recommend, because there are some competing goals here, is to support the process. We're going to figure this out during the public process. The scope of work has been put forward, and the consultant is going to do the work with the public to come to a consensus on what the use should be.
I have a question on that. Does that mean that the consultant then will use his own outreach opportunities to create a hierarchy about whether he or she, I don't know if it's a firm or that firm, maybe I should say, believes that the city needs sand volleyball more than pickleball, or needs fitness courts more than sand volleyball? Is that what that consultant is charged with?
Sure. So it's going to come down to how many of you were involved with Olympus Park and how we came to the development of Olympus Park? It was a very public process. There were 3 meetings that were done. Individuals came from the public to come and express their concerns, what they would like to see in those areas. It's going to be a similar process. But the other things that are going to come into play is the consultant is going to do a parking, traffic, and noise study, and they're going to relay that information to the public to let them know what those impacts are going to be, for them to basically make a recommendation on what the use should be.
Okay, could you also elaborate a little bit further if one person, let's say me, were to attend an open session with the consultant, why either couldn't or shouldn't identify myself as a Parks and Rec commissioner?
Sure. So generally speaking, when you go to a public meeting or you go to another agency, unless the commission is actually appointing you as their representative who speaks on behalf of the commission, that's the only way that you would be able to do that. We typically don't do that because it's one person representing the entire commission and speaking on behalf of the commission.
To clarify that, can he state that he is a commissioner, but that he is not there representing the commission? Just, well, I mean, I ask because I think it shows that he has a vested interest in what's being done and that he's there because he cares and he will relay back to the commission. So it's less that he's trying to say, I'm speaking on behalf of, but I am a liaison who will share back with this commission what I'm learning here today.
I'm gonna need to bring back some clarification on that and
Okay.
Yeah.
reread that part
I
of the
think
Brown Act.
I can reflect on that a little bit. For Olympus Park, there were the 3 public meetings that were held at Capri School. There were also some pop-ups around the community. There was a lot of outreach, and that was for a park in a particular neighborhood. This impacts a city park that the entire community uses. So I think that it will attract a broader audience. And in as much as most times there was a large contingency there at the Olympus Park meetings from our commission, I think that we as a commission will probably want to be there and want to be there kind of as a collective. Like, we will probably sit together. We'll probably get some guidance along the way from Director Carlin, and we will approach it to listen. You know, we want to hear what the public wants and try to be open-minded. How that works in with our work plan, I think poses a few problems because our work plan will be broken down into segments, and there will be, I'm assuming, a component for sand volleyball, a component for pickleball, a component for the fitness courts, which might even factor into this. So I believe we need to give Director Carlin some time to work through this and make recommendations as to how we approach it. But I envision some larger meetings that might be, for example, at the community center. I think that's logical, don't you?
So the one thing that I want to reiterate is that this will be a public process. This is not my decision, and it's not any other staff's decision. It will be done with a consultant, with the public, and they'll come to a consensus and a recommendation. So I would support the process.
Yes, and on that subject, just as we've been updating the sand volleyball community, so if we're supporting the process, part of our work plan might be to reach out to the pickleball community or sports court community and track, have meetings, have public outreach if that's part of our job, because it is specifically sand volleyball as far as what the previous year's work plan was. So we do need to discuss and sort of flesh that out a little bit, what exactly we'll be doing. Yeah.
May I add?
Yes, Vice Chair.
So my takeaway from this conversation would be that under item 5, you keep 1.2a, because I think that's going to be ongoing. And then in lieu of 1.4b and 3.1a, you potentially introduce an ad hoc that's simply feasibility of changing major use permits in ECP, and that will oversee whatever the process is. And the goal is to support the process to determine whether or not this is feasible and what the outcomes are. And maybe that way you're not removing sand volleyball, but you're also not pigeonholing into simply sand volleyball if the process should show that that is not the ideal use of it here. Is that how other people are interpreting this conversation?
I agree that I feel like maybe we would remove the 1.4b and create its own ad hoc committee that, from what I heard Director Carlin say, is promote the public process of land use for sports courts at ECP. I think kind of being a little bit general, and then as we kind of go through the process, we can start to list outcomes throughout the year of what we've done to kind of promote that maybe a little more general direction. I feel like it is one of those things that we definitely want to keep on with regards to making sure that the sand volleyball community is represented, and that we're continuing to move forward in the direction of getting courts, additional courts for them. But I think since it's not necessarily this although it was originally funded for looking at, from the idea of sand volleyball courts, it seems to have expanded a little bit with regards to the different uses, and I certainly hope sand volleyball is one of them. But perhaps being so specific as to the sports court isn't really what we need to do at this point, and just maybe be more general. But I think dedicating its own ad hoc would be worthwhile and something that, you know, we could report on a regular basis.
I think there's really two kind of related conversations going on right now. So one is the kind of the education we've all just received, which I think was very important from Director Carlin about the public process and making sure that we support that process. I think there's a kind of a related and ancillary conversation going on as it just relates to, in general, kind of land use opportunities at ECP that may or may not be currently reflected in the current consultant. And of course, that would not impact the consultant, because the consultant, just like we've learned, is looking at parking, noise, traffic, and feasibility. But there's maybe a further discussion to be had, because we don't know if the consultant's only looking at the teen center versus potentially looking at other locations at ECP. So I would like to, as I've just learned, kind of support the public process of what's going on with the consultant, and then suggest, and I don't know if it's within this, I think it's probably within this number 5, but have an ad hoc committee that just would review land use opportunities at ECP. And that gives us a opportunity to do studies, if you will, just on our own, without it impacting the consultant, recognizing that if we come to a conclusion about something, we might have to get a consultant to evaluate that at a later time. So I guess what we're sort of interested in, as we all are, is maximizing the use of ECP. That's what our goal is, and we're sort of just working and struggling to find out how we can do that.
So we'll bring back some more information about what it actually means to address the feasibility. Both David and I are under the understanding that it would be looking at the entire park, but we will bring that back and some answers to what you're asking tonight.
Thank you, Director Carlin and
Well,
Commissioner
I
Winters.
actually have
Yes.
a few additional questions regarding the contract and the contractor who's already working on this. And I guess it's around the inputs to their process.
So I want to confirm that we do not have a contractor in place.
Oh, okay.
We have not even gone out for request for proposal on this yet. I had mentioned to the commission at a previous meeting that we would not be able to get started on this until fall, so probably late fall. So that's kind of our timeline as far as that goes. Just the RFP process alone, or it may be an RFQ, actually a request for qualifications on a consultant, is at least a 3-month process. And we do not have, we will not have funding, so we're going into second year revised. We did secure funding for that, but everything's being looked at. We will have a finalized budget sometime May or June. And then once we have that funding completely secured, then we can start work on that.
Sorry, I misheard. I thought
That's
it
okay.
sounded like someone was already looking at it.
You said the word contractor, I think, once. I think you meant consultant.
Consultant,
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, and last thing I'll say is just it sounds like if we're working with the community, we'll be working with all of the communities, pickleball, sand volleyball, fitness. being that we're supporting the process and notifying them and telling them, okay, these meetings are taking place, be sure to make sure your voice is heard. Anything else on the sand volleyball court item? Okay, Trails Master Plan.
If I might just ask, just to get a little more clarification, since my involvement is stepping up a bit more, and I want to make sure that I understand the direction that the commission would like to take. So is it the consideration that the commission is interested in removing 14B and then adding a separate ad hoc potentially for basically promoting this public process of land use for sports courts at ECP? Or do you want to keep 14B as it is, or what are the thoughts?
For now, my opinion is to keep it until we have more discussion on it, but because I'm not ready to say I would want to get rid of that. But I think it would be likely that it would open up to a more general ad hoc.
Chair Warren, Commissioner
Yes.
Ritter, based on the conversation that I'm hearing tonight, we can meet with Roy Sepow, who's our planning director, one more time, and then we can formulate some language that you can look at, and hopefully what we can do is we can send the agenda out a little bit sooner next time. That way you have a little bit more time to digest and say, yeah, that's what we're thinking, or no, they're totally off base. We need to have further discussion about that. So I've gotten a lot of, I think everybody's kind of on the same track, and I kind of have an idea about how to formulate it. So we can definitely work on that, and then we can wordsmith it at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Trails Master Plan, any thoughts? I have sort of a trail-related work plan item, which is I wanted to talk about the maps, the Parks and Recreation maps. So I don't know if should I talk about that now, or should we bring that up as a separate, because I think it's trail-related.
This is a whole new work plan, so you can organize it however you want.
All right. Well, the commissioners that were on the Trails Master Plan, let me hear from you first, if you have any thoughts on how that should proceed.
So I caught up with Manager Norgard briefly today, and something that we highlighted as a possible helpful goal for this ad hoc in this coming work plan year would be doing a kind of reconciliation of the Trail Master Plan map specifically. I don't know if any of you have looked at it recently, but it still doesn't show Encinitas Community Park, for example. It's the Hall property with a parentheses future development. Olympus Park isn't on there. It just shows that there'll be a future development. So I think there are a lot of little things that we can do about making the master plan more reflective of where we are currently, and therefore more effective as a tool for all of us in this commission going forward. So that was one of the kind of big items that we had said would be a really beneficial goal for the subcommittee to have. And then another one being somewhat, because trying to oversee quarterly progress reports of existing trails and goals. And Manager Norgard provided Commissioner Ritter and I with Commissioner Ritter and me with a list of the prioritized trails and what's coming through development projects and what the city's got going on. And so just being able to give quarterly updates to the commission regarding those things. So those were the initial goals that we had identified, as well as continuing to work towards adding other connectors and things where possible. But those were the kind of main highlights so far.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ritter?
I agree with everything that Vice Chair Lappin mentioned, and would certainly welcome any additional ideas.
Okay, yeah, I mean, sort of a clarification of the master plan, possibly making it more public friendly, I think could be really helpful. My focus area was these specific city maps and on the website, and I just think they need to be improved upon. And so part of this relates to the new app. That could be a factor. But I just wanted to open it up and ask staff too, if you have any thoughts of if there's ways we can improve on our city trail maps.
Sure. So I can speak to that. So I was going to do this as part of my update, but you brought it up. We are working on the outer spatial app right now. Nick Buck is building that app and transferring some things over from our old app, but then also working with Bob Keeley to make sure information is correct and things are updated in the app. So really our focus right now is on getting the app correct and getting it up and going. Once that's complete, and we're really going to try to drive people toward that app to use that as the primary focus, but we can certainly continue, and we want to make sure our information is correct, is continuing to update those trail maps. It is somewhat operational, but we would love to have the eyes and the ears of the commission to, point out things that need to be updated and such. So that's where we're at with that.
Okay, thank you, Director. Yeah, maybe some sort of supporting of the trail projects, including outer spatial adopting, because I know there's organizations that have really nice maps. We work with these organizations, our own city maps. I would like to explore that a little bit, and maybe we need to have more conversations, but that's one of the things I'm hoping to help out with this coming work plan. Yes.
One additional item that could be related to that, and we'll bring back some additional information in the next meeting, is when Trail 95 is nearing completion, we could bring back some potential naming options to the commission for your consideration and recommendation as well.
Okay. Yep, thank you. Manager, that would help. We can add that to the Trails Master Plan. Anything else on this item 5?
Just a general question with regards to the master plan map and what we're doing with outer spatial and that trail map. Is that kind of happening all at the same time? I mean, for instance, as the outer spatial map is being updated with our trails, are we also looking at the master plan map where we're just making corrections along the way, so they just kind of happen simultaneously?
They're essentially using the same database. So as we're updating the GIS system for the Trails Master Plan, they'll be drawing that information into the Outer Spatial app as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 6, research best practices and policies in regard to multi-use trail sharing. Have I read the outcome for this one yet? Okay, we've been through all that. Thank you. Being on the ad hoc for this, I think, and e-bikes being so new over the last couple of years, I think we did a lot of research and made some great recommendations. The result of our efforts ended up being a lot safety related and supporting with city staff who Parks and Recreation took a safety lead really throughout the whole city. So there are lots of opportunities for us to help there. I don't personally see too many issues on our trails. So it would maybe be modified to something, but I don't see a big need right now to keep this work plan item on the work plan.
Yeah, I would concur with that.
I would concur as well,
Me
unless
too.
Staff has other ideas that we might be able to help.
Okay. Item 7, if we could see what that is. Okay. Tennis court and pickleball court use in city parks. I don't think this is the big issue right now. Speaking as part of the ad hoc, I don't think it needs to be on the work plan, in my opinion.
I would just like to reiterate, I think when we look back on our outcomes, this is like one of the big ones that I think that the commission achieved last year. So just kudos to all those commissioners that were involved in that.
I mean, thank you very much, sorry. There is some follow-through, though. I mean, if we wanted to look at Moonlight Beach, because there's some current budget requests, and so if we could be involved with that, maybe we could stay on regarding Moonlight Beach and dedicating courts. Commissioner O'Halloran, do you?
Yeah, I would propose we leave this one on there, given the the groundswell and interest of the community that we had in our last year, and that I think there may be still some options out there to engage that community and to look for additional places to satisfy their clear desire for additional pickleball courts. So I would propose that we keep it.
Okay. And as you mentioned, I was thinking about the Moonlight. If a number is determined and we wanted to help with fundraising, then that's something we could assist with. So, okay, yeah, that's,
Should there be, or does that ad hoc committee want to discuss any more specificity as it relates to that? Because I think it absolutely should be left on in terms of that we're still trying to understand how to incorporate, I think, more pickleball in the city. And I just didn't know if there should be more added to that, or if just review tennis court and pickleball court use in city parks is sufficient at this time, or it should be anything additional added to that. And I guess if you want to.
So I just want to chime in here. I think that when we were looking at this work plan item specifically, it was not to determine additional pickleball space within the community. It was, how do we get pickleball players and tennis players to play harmoniously on their courts? And you guys have achieved that. It's been wonderful.
yeah, it was, A and B don't get along, and we sort of resolved that, and we did an awesome job doing it.
Yeah.
No. But it's evolved a little bit, I think, and so you might want to think of it as a different work plan item if that helps. Because, yeah, I don't think we would call it review tennis court and pickleball court use. With that, it might roll into the other work plan item where we're talking about sport courts. So I think for now we should leave it and maybe have some more discussions on how we would actually define that. Okay, any more on tennis and pickleball? Okay. Composting options?
We can remove this.
Okay. And fitness trail court feasibility.
We did work a little bit on some first draft language for this item, and certainly open to discussion. So what we came up with was research and recommend adult outside fitness equipment, and research any potential site requirements for installation along the Cardiff CRT. Research and recommend adult fitness equipment to be installed along with scheduled playground equipment replacement when appropriate for the location. Request community feedback for the addition of adult fitness equipment in Encinitas parks in the CRT, and consider potential private and public funding opportunities for adult fitness equipment. That does sound like it's a full-time job. There's a lot listed in there, and certainly open for additional direction from staff and suggestions from the commission with regards to that.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm thinking how we can't all discuss this, right? So is that something that Commissioner Ritter and Winters, would you sort of work through that for the next meeting to have more?
Would you clarify what you mean by you can't discuss it?
Because we're open for the work plan item right now.
Yeah, right now you have an open work plan item that you're discussing future work plan. So it's just a brainstorm. So you can weigh in on the idea or think.
Well, no, I mean between now and the next meeting. I know we can discuss it now.
Correct. It needs to be.
Yeah.
It needs to be discussed in a public forum. So if you have any feedback for them, you can give it to them now, or come back at the next meeting and bring back feedback on maybe some elements that you'd like to see in there, or some things that
Okay,
you.
I think personally that's what I'll do. Because, yeah.
So on the, are we proposing to adjust the first column from feasibility to execution? I don't know if that's the right word, but to development of those courts? Because I think you all did a fantastic job executing and working on the feasibility. And you have clarity now, and you want to take that to the next step and try and make it a reality. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. I would say that we also realize that the term of a year might be aggressive, that anything's going to happen. There may be some opportunities that Director Carlin informed me that they have scheduled playground equipment replacements for various parks coming up, and that we might look at some of those locations to see if, in addition of some fitness amenity for adults, might be something to consider as well. So that's something that could happen a little faster. That's kind of why I included that sentence in there. I think that that you do bring up a good question as to what the main title of it is. I do think it should be altered. Do you have any suggestions, Commissioner Winters?
Sure. I mean, I'm always a fan of the word implementation. And every time I say that word, I get in trouble with that.
We're a fan of the word checkbook.
I fully appreciate that. And I think we did address that in the potential work outcome. And maybe if we were able to get fitness trail court implementation, and if Commissioner Ritter could then read his or our potential work plan outcome, that might provide a little bit. Maybe we could read it one more time, because it was certainly a lot to take at one moment. But if we were able to do the first column to implementation, then maybe the potential work plan outcomes makes more sense.
So you'd like me to read it again?
Please.
So what we've written so far is research and recommend adult outside fitness equipment and research any potential site requirements for installation along the Cardiff CRT. So that first part is just the idea that what would be involved with actually looking at that site along the Cardiff Coastal Rail Trail if we wanted to put fitness amenities there. So I'm learning. Go ahead.
No, and so I probably cut you off too early. I apologize.
Oh, that's fine. But if you have something to say, please.
No, we've understand the process now. There may be different types of permitting that's necessary. Obviously, if there are permits that are required, which it seems like there would be, that would require funding. So recognizing that there's, especially along the CRT, there's just a variety of different types of boxes that need to be checked, and we're looking for and understanding better what those are, and then the process of getting, hopefully, if it makes sense, getting through those, I don't want to say hurdles, but just processes that have to happen. I think that's what we're trying to get at with that first sentence or two.
Yeah.
Because I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I think this is the most exciting near-term action item going forward, and I'd love to help work on it next year. What I would suggest is that I like the language you started with about adult outside fitness, and maybe if you left that very broad to give us the opportunity to introduce that into some of the park revisions, as Director Carlin has suggested, then we could be active in that approach in the near term while simultaneously working on the rail trail and simultaneously looking at placement, potential placement on other trails in the future, and develop, kind of a long-term plan that will probably become even longer term than we can fathom at this point. But it will help us launch it, I think, if we get some adult fitness equipment out there to get the public excited about it. If we can introduce it into a park or two and get a little bit higher visibility, I think that would be great.
And I do agree with you that getting something out there somewhere, but it needs to be somewhere that is high visibility. putting it, for instance, in Weiro Park in Olivenhain,
Right
just,
by my house.
it'd be great for you, but, it doesn't prove our case. The obvious place for this too would be in ECP if they end up deciding that that would be a good place for that land use. Just because it's so central in the community, there's availability and there's so much parking, et cetera.
Manager Norgard, did you have something that you wanted to say?
The land use planning nerd in me would suggest that maybe the phase that you're in right now is planning. So in terms of getting a verb in your work plan name, because you've explored feasibility, and then you would go through planning, and then, if applicable, design and implementation.
Yeah, I like the word planning as well, thank you. Yeah.
I like the word recommendations, because ultimately, I would think you'll have a number of recommendations at a minimum.
Planning and recommendation.
Yeah.
I like both of those.
And implementation.
I knew you were going to try and get that in there.
And funding.
Well, I mean, is part of this work plan going to be getting a rough sense of how much it costs? Because I know you can't get exact. If you're getting exact numbers, that means staff or the city is involved, and so we're not at that point, right? So, do you think you would be providing sort of a rough idea of cost, or?
Well, I think a couple things. First of all, it's by location. So if we're looking at the CRT, I think the first thing that we need to decide is, what do we think we might want there? Because depending upon what you install has a lot of differences regarding what might need to be done. And then relative to that, just kind of getting a list of, well, if you're going to do that, what potentially are all the different permits that you're going to have to go through? Because it's on the coast. Is it the Coastal Commission? Is it a grading permit? Is it having to go through CEQA? So there are lots of potentials out there, and I think to Manager Nargard's point that having the word planning in there allows us to at least get an understanding of, okay, well, what are we looking at? It may end up being that as we look at this, that the CRT is actually more arduous to do than using one of our existing park properties and adding something there. So, but we don't really know until we kind of get into the process. The second sentence that we had in this work plan item draft was research and recommend adult fitness equipment to be installed along with scheduled playground equipment replacement when appropriate for the location. So again, they have 3, I think, playground equipments that are scheduled to be done in the coming year. That might be an opportunity to take a look at whether any of those locations might be worthwhile. I feel like I want to have a slam dunk win starting out. So, I want to make sure that it's in a park that has high visibility, that people know that it's there, and that there'll be public demand for more. So the next sentence is request community feedback for the addition of adult fitness equipment in Encinitas parks in the CRT. The idea there is just to engage with the community and to get a sense of, is this a Commissioner Ritter and Winters project that they're just driving forward, or is this something that truly the community feels like they want, like the sand volleyball people want their sand volleyball courts. So trying to get an understanding and a handle on that, I think, is important. And then finally, and this is actually Director Carlin's favorite part, consider potential private and public funding opportunities for adult outdoor fitness equipment. So that could be anywhere, anything from looking for private donations, either on the corporate or personal level, looking at grant opportunities, and then also begging with the city. So that was kind of the scope that we were thinking. It is a lot, and but I didn't want it to be so narrow that that it limited us either.
No, I like that, and you breaking that down right there, that really helps. It sounds like a good work plan item. I mean, you don't, like you say, you don't want it to be too general.
Yeah, I think the language for those last three sentences was perfect.
Thank you.
Provides a lot of opportunity.
Okay, anything else on the fitness trail court feasibility? So do we have any new ideas? I have one for a work plan item, and I wanted to ask staff about volunteers for Parks and Recreation, and if there is a need, and if we can be helpful with that. Meaning parks and trails, city, department events.
So one thing that we've been talking about as a staff, and this conversation started before COVID, and then COVID hit us, and this took a back burner. But we were actually working toward having a web page on the city's website regarding volunteerism in the city. And so one thing that we've worked on is we got some of the infrastructure that we need as far as managing volunteers, and Tracy's team is going to be taking this on at some point once we're completely fully staffed. And one of our new supervisors will be taking on volunteers, and we'll be building a database of volunteers or potential volunteers. And then what we're looking to do is actually put on the city's website, and we're still trying to determine where that would go, but volunteer opportunities, where people could actually go in, sign up. They could actually see job descriptions of what they'd be doing as a volunteer there, or signing up to volunteer at an event, signing up for shifts for different things. And that will help us to kind of centralize that, get them to sign waivers ahead of time, and make sure that we're utilizing community members that want to volunteer in the best way possible and making it worth their while. So we will be working on that, hopefully in this next fiscal year as we move into it. But we do have a little bit of the infrastructure already in place as far as like an iPad so that we can check people in at events, and also log the number of hours that we have for volunteers and have a better log of that. I've worked for other cities that have a very robust volunteer program where they actually have a volunteer coordinator that coordinates all the volunteers, and that's their full-time job. So we're looking to make sure that we're utilizing individuals in the community that want to volunteer, but making it meaningful for them, and then also being able to track that to show the value of that.
Okay, and as far as it relates to the commission, is that something that you feel like there would be something we could assist with?
I actually think that it would be very beneficial, since you already are volunteers, if a couple people wanted to sit in with staff and talk about what that's going to look like and maybe offer ideas. As a volunteer, I would like to see A, B, and C.
Okay.
So if you're interested in forming an ad hoc to sit with city staff to talk about different elements of that, we'd certainly be happy to have you.
Okay, my other thought is maybe PEP could be involved in some way, but I can't speak for PEP. But, okay, so we will continue to explore that. And Vice Chair Lappin, I think I cut you off. Oh, yeah.
Sorry. It may already be on your radar, but there's a great group out of New York City called New York Cares, which is exactly that. It's a volunteer database that you pre-register. You have to do an orientation, but once you're oriented and registered, you can search any opportunity by date, by time, by what you want to do. There's also kind of subsequent opportunities to donate and things like that. But if you're looking for any inspiration for websites that have got it pretty well dialed in, I think I would encourage you to just take a look at that one.
Okay. Any other possible work plan items for discussion? Yes, Commissioner Winters.
Yeah, I had an idea that I'd like to throw out, and I'm not sure if it's needed, so I was going to ask the staff if they could comment. I was actually very interested to learn, based on Commissioner Ritter's monumental journey to every every location in the city that he accomplished as we were evaluating for our other work plan. But does the staff need or have and I was surprised that there seemed to be some underutilized and almost, for lack of a better word, vacant type of places that are still within kind of Parks and Rec. And I understand all the limitations on your time. Does the staff, would it be helpful to kind of provide any additional information about some of these parcels that are there and say, oh, this might be something that could be developed into maybe a higher level of utility X number of years down the road, or is that currently not? Because I was just very surprised that even it might be something as simple as putting benches in for vistas, for views, or things like that. But I was just very surprised that there seems to be at least a few spaces that seem to be undeveloped and underutilized.
So for the most part, our city is built out. Many of our parks already have the defined uses that are there, and or if you have an overlook or some type of thing like that, there is, there is a reason that it is set aside as the way it is. I know that David brought back some information in reference to a question that was asked at the last meeting. He was going to share it during his update, but he could certainly share that now too if he wants. But it is pretty limited on how much we have out there as far as undeveloped space. In fact, this, and Marla could probably speak to this, there was a time when we were trying to investigate possible open space, and it was tough. It was very tough. So, and a lot of our parks do already have like a master plan, or it has defined uses for that park. So we are pretty built out in that aspect.
Yeah, it can be a little daunting and a little discouraging as you look out across the city of Encinitas. But that that doesn't diminish the effort. I mean, when we broke up into committees and each took a chunk of Encinitas, we actually were, somewhat effective in that some open space came out of that. So if there's any way that you think it could be effective, it's something, as you point out, something as simple as putting some benches on some of those properties. If that's doable, then it would be an opportunity for us to do something of value to the community.
So I also want to mention one thing that came to mind as Marla was speaking, is one of the other things that supports what you're looking at is the Parks Master Plan. I would implore you, if you haven't had a good chance to really dive into that document, it's great reading. Read through some sections of that, especially as it pertains to use of public spaces. There's a lot of defining things in there. Like one of the things that it does support is sports courts, addition of sports courts in different parks and such. So kind of hone in on exactly what you're looking for there and see if it'll, see how it aligns with the Parks Master Plan.
Okay.
One last item that I would add to that is different levels of service in different areas and different perceptions of what is a complete space. Often folks who visit highly active spaces that go to other spaces will perceive them as underutilized, but the folks that live around there tend to like it that way. So it takes a little bit of a measured approach. Like Travis mentioned, that goes back to the Parks Master Plan.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any other potential work plan items?
I do have another idea that I would like to propose to the commission. As you may realize, I also serve on the City of Encinitas Equity Committee. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that at this point, since, but it's been said now. But anyhow, one of the things that we focus on is, and one of the things that we're looking at recommending to the City Council is actually how we can provide some diversity in our commissions. Commissions often can be a launch pad for future political careers with city government or other avenues. So for us, we're looking at what is it that we can do to expand the pool of candidates that the city council has the opportunity to interview to provide that diverse voice. And it's a scientific fact that diverse groups make better decisions than homogeneous ones. So it really is a fine goal, I feel, to create that diversity wherever we can. And in the sense that I know that we'll be losing Marla because she's terming out at the end of this next year, I'm suggesting, and perhaps there might be some commissioners that are currently serving and may not wish to extend beyond their first term. I'm suggesting that perhaps we consider an ad hoc that would basically work to promote commission vacancies that come up to diverse communities to encourage greater participation in city government.
So increasing awareness for commissioner opportunities. Yeah, I think something like that could be a good item.
If I could just speak on that, one thing that I did this past year, I'm a certified Parks and Recreation professional, as many of our staff are. One of the things that we have to do every 2 years is do our CEUs, which can be painful and fun at the same time. But one thing that you might want to expand on that is maybe exploring best practices when it comes to diversity and inclusion in recreation and parks programming. That was one of the sessions that I actually did, and it was very informative. And I learned a lot. And I also learned about some things that are inclusionary or that you really don't think of when you think of diversity and inclusion. So that might be something that you might want to consider as well.
I agree. I think that that could also be added on for that particular ad hoc. Because obviously we're not going to spend a year trying to find a replacement. So I kind of feel like I know it's going to be really tough shoes to fill. And we may need that year. But at any point, I think that would also give the commission members that decide to serve on that committee some additional work items to work on.
I think a good segue actually from this conversation into what I think is next is the community grant
Oh, yes.
nominations. Is I did that last year, and I sat on that evaluation panel, and I think that there are a number of community organizations who promote diversity within sport and programming, and so this ad hoc could align very nicely with that, and just learning about different groups within the community who are trying to serve predominantly underserved and underrepresented communities. So just something to think about, that there could be overlap.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair. Okay, well, yes. Any other work plan discussion for now? Okay. So moving on to that item 8C, we're looking for a commissioner to serve on the evaluation panel for the community grant program. And do we have a commissioner that is interested in that?
I had expressed interest.
Okay, all right. That's great. Yeah, Vice Chair did it last year, and Commissioner Elliott has done that. So thank you. Yes, Commissioner Elliott. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I've done it twice, and I
so-
echo everything that Vice Chair Lappin just said. I think it's a really wonderful experience. It gives you a broader perspective of the needs of the community, and I think you would just love it, Commissioner Ritter.
Okay.
I would also just say that if there are any other commissioners, particularly any that wanted to take on the opportunity who may have less time on the commission than I do, I certainly wouldn't want to take away their opportunity. So if there's anyone else, I mean, certainly feel free to speak up.
Okay. Is this a actionable item? Is this something we vote on? It is? Okay.
Maybe voting a second.
We have a,
I would second that nominee.
all right. Okay, that motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We have another item, 8D, Parks and Recreation Commission proposed meeting dates. And I believe this is fairly standard. I wanted to ask, I'm just curious, I don't think we were dark last year. Is that a new change, or during the summer? I mean, during the July?
Typically, we are dark during July and December.
Okay.
Is there, and your question, I'm not avoiding your question. I just don't recall if we were, but I'm just saying historically we've been dark in
Okay,
July
I
and-
don't remember. I think.
I think there's confusion because we're dark as far as the meeting, but that's because during that month, we usually do a tour. And there have been past years where we've actually been dark for 2 months in the summer when we used to do 2 separate tours. Evidently, the recommendation is put forward that we be dark in July, and as far as we won't meet here, but probably at some point during that month, we will put together a tour and go look at some parks, some recreation plans, some programs.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Elliott. Yeah, I do not have any issue with these meeting dates.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting dates.
I second.
I just one other comment I
Commissioner
might
Ritter, yes.
mention is, I'm not quite sure, and perhaps staff could elaborate. When we were on those tours, we actually recorded the meetings at different locations. So would that be considered? I mean, we still would need to do that if we were technically dark here, but yet we're, by the Brown Act, I assume we would need to basically record that tour that we do.
That's correct. That's correct. We record the beginning of the meeting. We call the meeting to order, and then we break for the commission tour, and then we reconvene for adjournment. That meeting is always a special meeting, so the chair can call that special meeting. So that does not need to be on the list, and the chair can call a special meeting at any time.
Okay, thank you for the clarification on that.
I think the other question is, does the commission want to be completely dark in the summer to accommodate vacations, or whether, because I assume that's basically why we're dark in December, is because of the December holidays. So that would be the only other thing that I would throw out, is whether the commission feels like they would like to be dark in July, or whether they'd like to take that month to actually go tour facilities as a special meeting. I guess we don't really need to decide the special meeting aspect of it, since we can call that at any point. So we could just say that we're going to be dark, and then we can decide later.
My,
Go ahead.
my interpretation was just that we wouldn't have a scheduled meeting for July, but to your point, you could call a special meeting at a different date if we want to do.
Okay, yes, I'm fine with the dates. Do we have a motion? We do have a motion on the floor, I think.
I believe Vice Chair Lappin motioned and seconded by Chair Warren.
Okay.
The motion passes.
Okay. The action items are complete. We are going to 9A, Park Operations Report. Mr. Norgard?
Thank you, Chair. I have a number of items to report on tonight. As a reminder for the commission, Arbor Day is scheduled for April 30th from 9 a.m. to noon at Cottonwood Creek. All are welcome to attend, and we have volunteer spaces if anybody wants to volunteer for that event. We have a flyer that'll be going out this week. It's pretty good looking. Everybody should get a copy of that. We're also planning to have T-shirts for that event, and we'll have a similar graphic to the flyer, so when you see the flyer, you'll understand what that looks like. I personally think they're really good. I did not design them, so no favoritism there. In addition, we recently trimmed the Torrey pine at Swami's that is nearest to the bathroom. There were some included limbs and some limbs that were overhanging the restroom building. That had been planned, and we were just waiting for the right time of the year to do that. We had quite a few members of the public attend, just out of curiosity, take pictures and ask questions. So that was a successful event. Additionally, at Moonlight Beach, we have a project coming up very soon to place up to 15,000 cubic yards of beach-compatible sand in the intertidal zone from the center of Moonlight Beach to the north and potentially to the south, depending on how much material is available for that location. Work will begin on March 21st and last for approximately 2 to 3 weeks. There will be some limited impacts to beach access. Essentially, Moonlight Beach will be largely open. There will be one small area in the center that will be closed as trucks come in and dump the material, which will be then carried by a loader to other areas within the beach. Certain parts of the beach will be closed for access while the loaders are moving through there. That will be typically Monday through Friday business hours. There may be some later hours and 1 or 2 Saturdays, but we're also working to minimize any impacts to any of the recreation and reservation things that we have going on at that time. But it's going to be a good opportunity to get some sand in that location, which hasn't happened for quite a while and has seen some erosion.
I have a question. Sorry. And this may be outside Parks and Recs, but does the City of Encinitas have a position on what the City of Oceanside is planning to do associated with sand and retention of sand on beaches?
We don't take a position as city staff. My understanding is that the council has not yet either.
Yeah, I know that Del Mar has and some of the other surrounding or potentially impacted cities have. Okay, thank you.
Where is the sand coming from?
The sand is coming from the I-5 widening, particularly the area around the bridge. As another update, staff from Infrastructure and Sustainability are planning to attend the April Commission meeting and give an update and overview for Trail 95, which will begin construction soon, and Trail 82, which is currently in the design phase. And following up from last month's meeting, we had a request for information regarding some undeveloped spaces at the western terminus of F and G Streets. Staff researched available documents. I have a couple that I will share. This is just a document that we have in our records in GIS. This is from a 1951 sewer project that was happening at the time, and I really just showed this to note the city grid. You can see where the 2 red dots are. Those spaces are basically similar to as they are shown today. And then when we search this in our GIS database for all the historical records, not noted on here, but when you pull this up, the information that comes up is that the legal start date for each of these parcels is recorded as March 20th, 1883. So they are essentially original to the total portfolio of the city. So I did not find any surreptitious donation information from any potential celebrities in the past. Both of these parcels are maintained as unimproved bluff and beach overlook access areas. Not access, just areas. Given the sensitivity of the bluffs, environmental requirements under CEQA, and coastal development permitting requirements, there are currently no plans to improve these areas. And also a follow-up from our last meeting regarding the signs at Sun Vista Park. In 2008, the Encinitas Fire Department was awarded a competitive grant from FEMA under the Fire Prevention and Safety Grant Program. The scope of the grant included the creation of a defensible space exhibit garden at both Quail Botanic Gardens and Sun Vista Park to provide a visual demonstration of what defensible space would look like in a wildland-urban interface area. The signs at Sun Vista Park were installed in 2009. Since that time, park staff have made several modifications to the garden, including swapping out plant species, soil amendments, and installing a French drain system to regulate soil moisture. As noted in the last meeting, the signs have some sun damage, and additionally, in the last few years, some of the fire-wise zones have changed that reflect different mitigation practices. Replacing signs is something that Parks does rather frequently in our normal operations. For example, we're installing new signs at several beach locations in anticipation of the summer events. However, grant funding from a federal agency has different timing effects on when we can and what we cannot do. So Fire has actually already reached out and contacted FEMA to verify what updates we are able to do, and we're waiting for some direction back from them. So Parks and Fire will continue to work closely together as we receive more information from FEMA in the following weeks. That concludes my report.
Yes, Vice Chair Lappin, thank you. Manager Norgard.
Thank you. That was really informative. Thank you for all of those updates. I wanted to follow up really briefly on the kickoff meeting you had regarding Trail 95. Or I think at our last meeting you had mentioned that you usually do a issue notice to start within 2 weeks of those meetings. Are we still on track for that? Like, are we in that threshold for it to start?
That meeting was actually postponed,
Oh,
and I
okay.
believe it is actually happening tomorrow.
Okay.
I will be attending that meeting, and the intent is to get the contractor to begin as quickly as possible.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Recreation Service. Yep.
If I could just make a quick comment, I wanted to thank very much for the time that you spent on researching those various items. Obviously, if you're going back to documents from 1883, it does take a little work to do that. So I just wanted to express my thanks for that. So then it sounds like they are original, basically, City of Encinitas property. Does that mean they're Parks and Recreation land, or is it just city land?
My understanding is that it is city land and not designated as park land.
Thank you. And thank you, too, for all that research on the Sun Vista Parks. Obviously, that goes deep as well when you consider that it's not even something that we got grant funding for, but it actually came from the fire departments and FEMA. So there is a depth of work in determining all that, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. Recreation Services Manager Staten. Thank you.
All right. Quite a few things to update on. The first one is that the library hours are going to be extended starting April 11th. For those of you that don't know, the library hours were a bit truncated to about 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. They will be extended on certain days until 7 p.m., other days until 5, and other days until 6. So there is going to be some changes to both the Encinitas and Cardiff by the Sea library hours. So those of you that have jobs where maybe you you can't get there by 4 will now be able to frequent the library. And again, that goes into effect April 11th. I do believe I heard today that April 17th, the library will be closed due to a holiday that was reported at an earlier meeting. We have some events coming up. There's, in conjunction with the Encinitas Chamber of Commerce, up at the Encinitas Community and Senior Center, we will be doing the Business and Community Expo. That's going to be taking place on March 22nd, so next week, Tuesday, from 5:30 to 8 p.m. It is a free event, and so we encourage all of your attendance at that to check out what the Chamber of Commerce and the city are doing. Also, we have the egg hunt coming up on April 16th. The egg hunt times are 10:15, 11, and 11:45. We would love any participation by the commissioners. Currently, are any of you planning to attend? Okay, excellent. I'll make note of that. And let's see, registration for summer camps and spring programming happened on March 7th. It began at 8 a.m. to great fanfare. I'm happy to report that a lot of the programming, especially our beach programming, is already sold out. So staff worked very hard on processing all of those registrations and answering a lot of questions. We're already in the swing of things for starting the summer brochure process and getting that out to residents as quickly as possible. We have a new supervisor starting on Monday. So we're really excited to be welcoming this supervisor. She has a great breadth of experience in camps, in programming. She also has some experience in senior nutrition. So we'll be hiring her mostly to focus on the programming at the center as well as our Seaside Day Camp. She will also be assisting us with nutrition as we continue to evaluate that program and the hiring of a supervisor for that position. In addition, we have interviews scheduled for our extended part-time positions. We'll be interviewing for all 3 of those openings next week and hoping to onboard the selected candidates as soon as possible. And I believe that concludes my update.
Okay, thank you very much. A lot going on. That's great.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Commissioner
On the egg hunt, is there anything specific that the commissioners that would be available to attend could help you with?
My understanding, and maybe Director Carlin can speak to it a little bit more, is that in the past, the council members have been the ones to start the egg hunt specifically at those times and welcome people, but that commissioners have been in a volunteer capacity to help with the wrangling of all of the children and anything that staff needs at the time. But if you want to jump in.
Yeah, typically as well, commissioners would be at the volunteer check-in table, thanking volunteers, welcoming them, that kind of thing. And then we've always said, hey, Commissioner Ritter, I'm going to go over and do this. Do you want to come with me and help out with this? So, in between egg hunts, we spread eggs out for the next hunt. So those are all things that you can be involved in. But really being there as an ambassador, welcoming people is a very important role. And we usually save that for our commissioners.
Okay, thank you. I don't believe we have any commission member-initiated agenda items or future agenda items added by commission members.
Do you want me to just do a report, director
I
report?
don't know why I skipped.
It's
right
going to be
here.
it's almost as brief as the skip because I've interjected along the way. So I talked about outer spatial. The one thing that I wanted to add about outer spatial as well is we're seeing many more capacities to this app than what our previous app could produce. There are things like we can actually promote events and we can do challenges and all kinds of fun stuff on this new app that we couldn't do on the old one. So that's exciting. As Nick is building this, he's learning more about it, and there's some things that we can do with that app. So that's exciting. He's looking to possibly have that launched by the summertime. So that's what we're looking at as far as launch date. Also, we did have another person that joined our team since the last commission meeting. Colette Murphy was promoted to the arts administrator a little while back and vacated her position as the arts assistant. And we brought on a new arts assistant named Connor Sheehan. And you can't miss him. He's 6'5" tall. And so he's definitely a presence in our department. He's actually had some really good experience with curating exhibits in the past. And then also he worked over at Old Town for the for the Park Service over there. So we're excited to have him here, and he just got started. So he'll be assisting Colette with art exhibitions, programs, events related to the Arts Division.
Thank you, Director Carlin. Okay, do we have any commission member initiated agenda items or future agenda items added by commission members? No, okay. Let's do item 12, Commissioner Roundtable, starting with Vice Chair Lappin.
I have a few updates I just wanted to share with the commission. Bike Walk Encinitas has drafted language that's been adopted as a council member initiated agenda item for tomorrow's city council meeting regarding introducing this notion of like a quick path to pedestrian and kind of safety measures within the city. So if something comes before city council that affects pedestrian safety and mobility, and the traditional path by which you're able to go about actioning those things is to propose it, get a visual, promote it to the council. The council then says, we have budget, here's how we can go about it. And Encinitas Bike Walk is really trying to introduce like a fast track of quick wins that you could do without having to go through that more laborious process that's typically much more budget heavy. And I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. And if it's something that you're interested in learning more about, the team at Encinitas Bike Walk, I'm sure would be more than happy to educate you. But just something to know that it's going on, and it could be beneficial to our committee as well if they're able to action that. I have personally noticed a lot of dogs in Upper Glen Park, so I've reached out to the Humane Society, off-leash dogs, with many droppings left behind in their wake. So I've reached out to the Humane Society just to see what can be done, just to remind people that that is not technically an off-leash dog area. And I'll see what they say, but just to remind the public and then us as well that those ordinances exist. I also reached out to the Planning Commission regarding Trails 65 and 66. It looks like there might be new development happening over between Miracosta Community College and the 5. There's a new fencing up over what was a strawberry farm for a really long time. And I'm not sure what's happening there, but I know that our master plan identified 2 potential trails. So I've reached out to them just to see if there's any development happening that may mean getting those trails developed, and to just make sure it's something on their radar if it is possible that that could happen. And that's everything.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Elliott.
Yeah, I just want to thank Director Carlin for his work on outer spatial. I'm very excited about that, and he knows from my background here that I'm also very excited about the opportunity to name the 2 trails. I'm looking forward to that. Manager Norgard, thank you so much for your contributions as we crafted our outcomes. And that whole process, as Commissioner Ritter mentioned, just went so smoothly, more smoothly than at any of the 5 prior years. And I think it's because of the system you developed and nudging us along to submit those early and to help us develop them. So thank you. I know that if you consider that your nerdiness is highly valued here. And for Manager Staten, I just want to congratulate you on surviving the sign-ups for the beach camps, because I know how brutal that is. I also want to take a minute to thank Chair Warren for his outstanding service over the scope of this past year. It has just run like clockwork, despite the fact that we were doing a big chunk of it over Zoom and then, here and there. And I feel like we're just now having an opportunity to coalesce as a commission. And his guidance throughout all that has been absolutely terrific.
Thank you. I'll try not to skip anything else. Commissioner Ritter, no, Commissioner O'Halloran.
I just want to echo what my fellow commissioner has said and congratulated you on your chairmanship. And thank you very much to the Parks and Recs staff, all of your staff, and to yourselves for everything you do for us here in San Diego. Encinitas. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ritter.
Just as a quick update, actually, Vice Chair Lappin and I both attended the Mobility and Traffic Safety Commission meeting last night. The staff was actually making a presentation of some general concepts for that intersection that we've been working on with regards to San Alejo and Manchester Avenue and the connection to the San Alejo Lagoon. So it was, I'm very happy to say that we had multiple organizations, including the Nature Collective, the Encinitas Bike Walk, Cardiff 101 Main Street, Cardiff Town Council, and then lots of residents had sent emails to the commissioners in support of the project. It's not going to be a simple project, which means it's also going to cost a bit of money. But there are some things that I think that we can do, and they're looking at opportunities to look at a Cadillac version, as Abe says, and maybe a more realistic version of what we can do. And they'll be providing costs, and we'll include it in the package that they submit to the City Council for this coming fiscal year. So that's pretty exciting. And then Vice Chair Lappin and I, we also discussed and about the idea of the quick build and looking at, okay, what could we do right now that would improve that situation? And we both sent emails to the City Council to suggest that they, as private citizens, to suggest that they consider extensively trimming back those trees along that route along Manchester and San Alejo Avenue, so that at least you could walk down through there without having to dodge limbs and finding yourself into the traffic lane. Councilman member Lindsay has actually replied that she's forward that on up for staff to take a look at as to whether that could be something that could be done. And that would promote a lot of safety, particularly for those Cardiff residents that kind of do a cut through that access that directly, as well as those that live down in that level. So that was great news. I'm excited that that's kind of moving forward. I would also like to echo my fellow commissioners' thanks and gratitude for Chair Warren on getting us through COVID. It has been challenging, and the fact is that he spends a lot of time working with staff to basically help make these meetings happen. So definitely appreciate that time and effort that you spend. In addition to that, he also works behind the scenes to facilitate conversations between staff and other commissioners. And again, those are things that you may not see him do, but he's certainly involved and very supportive of the commissioners. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Ross. Commissioner Winters.
I'll be brief because I'm last, but I also want to thank you for your leadership as a new commissioner this year. It was great to be able to rely on you with if there was ever a question or if anything that we needed to understand from a process perspective. So thank you very much for that. And new Chair Lappin, best of luck in your new position. And I also want to thank all the staff, but most importantly, I was super pleased with how we were able to wrap up these outcomes. I think that was very efficient, and I know that staff gave a lot of input to us individually and the various ad hocs collectively, and I think that was very valuable time. And I also want to just thank them because it seems like every time our ad hoc has wanted to bounce a question or have a quick meeting, both Director, I'm going to mess up, sorry, Manager Norgard and Director Carlin have been, readily available. And I just appreciate that because I think they're kind of constantly trying to provide us with good advice and guidance and making sure that we're staying in the guardrails that we're supposed to. So good work this year. Looking forward to everything going forward. So thank you. Yep.
Thank you. One thing I just wanted to say when we were talking about guest speakers is I did reach out to Bob Hahn from the city of Poway with the trail system, and he, hopefully, I've not heard back, but he could be a good guest speaker because he has about 30 years of experience, including creating a volunteer program. So I just wanted to mention that that's someone I hope can come talk to us. And other than that, I'm excited for the work plan. I wanted to thank all staff and all my, my vice chair and fellow commissioners. I think we did a great job considering the conditions, and I look forward to next year. So thank you. And with that, I will adjourn today's meeting at 7:34.